What's up, subjects? All 12 of you, subjects to the 3 empires. It's early in the morning. Really early.
It's a fucking 6:30 in the morning. I've been busting my ass all day working construction, and you kids wake me up with your stupid fucking podcast. I gotta chop a wood in the morning.
It's okay, so this is the second installment. A little bit more all over the place. We're talking historical movies, specifically 300. We're talking the American political system and why we think it's so fucked up. And we'll get a little bit of a debate in there about Julius Caesar versus Napoleon and Alexander the Great versus Cyrus the Great. Today we got a special guest on with us. He's a professional animator and a history buff of... blah, 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 blah. And a history buff. And also my cousin, Lucas Render Giovannetti. So, strap on in. Let's get this shit started.
You are now entering the Three Empires podcast, by far the most dastardly and majestic political system in all the land. With your hosts, Shahob And Stefano.
Hold on. We're talking about why Shahob does not like 300. Because apparently he's not a big fan of 300 for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
Oh, yeah, for some reason. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, elaborate.
As far as the movie goes, definitely not the worst movie I've ever seen. I actually enjoy the music. The
score is
the score is an amazing piece in the whole movie.
I even think, what's his name? The guy that directed Watchmen.
Yeah, that's...
Zack Snyder.
Yeah, Zack Snyder.
He did a really good job with the visuals, make it look like a comic book.
Absolutely, yeah.
I feel like more comic movies got to do.
He took, what he took for the film Watchmen, he basically took that entire graphic novel and verbatim put it into the movie.
Verbatim.
Like,
even the comic book within the movie, he made a separate Blu-ray thing for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fucking great.
Which is awesome.
Because most directors just glaze right over that shit, right? They make all these superficial changes to the... By the time the comic movie is released, it's like a shadow of what it once was in the comic book.
Exactly.
Right?
And Zack Snyder also directed 300, and I have nothing against Zack Snyder. I actually really enjoy his work as far as a director.
Yeah, he's good.
And yeah, I mean...
You hate 300.
I do hate
You didn't get into that. Why you 300? I think it's a good popcorn.
Do you know what it is? Do you know what I think? He hates how accurate it is.
Yeah.
He hates how barbaric and uncivilized the
true.
Persian hordes were.
How
they paled in comparison to the civilized Greeks.
Yeah.
Right? Who are a true warrior culture. Not the Persians who brought slaves.
All the slaves.
Who brought slaves.
Every slave in existence was apparently owned by the Persians at the time.
Every man, woman, and child in the Persian Empire, including the king himself, was a slave. The Spartans, they brought warriors, okay? Mm-hmm. They were a warrior society.
And the god King Xerxes, this giant 9-foot tall...
He was a 10-foot tall...
Mongoloid black guy. It was perfect.
He was a 10-foot...
black guy. Yeah, he was African. It's like, okay, so Adebisi is the fucking emperor.
He was a 10-foot tall gay guy covered in jewelry.
See, here's the thing. I don't like the movie only because it's not a good movie as a cinematic spectacle. But here's the thing, though. My opinion of the film has radically changed from when I was younger, when I despised this movie for everything that it was.
Of course.
I actually enjoy it for one reason and one reason only. The movie begins as a freaking camp story to all the other half-naked Spartan dudes. From the one from Faramir, that one guy who's missing an eye, and he's telling the story. And the whole movie is basically told from his perspective. Only his perspective.
Yeah.
And all of it's absolute nonsense. But it's still entertaining. It's a popcorn flick, yeah.
That's what it is at the end of the day. It's a popcorn flick, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I when I was watching The Last Legion, I was fucking tearing my eyes out because of how, historically inaccurate it is. Just so shit. They put no efforts,
What's The Last Legion?
Oh, it's with Colin Firth. It's
And
like
Channing Tatum.
Oh, it's like one of the worst fucking movies I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, not only just a shitty movie, but if you're talking about historical accuracy, it just shoots way fucking off. It's like, oh, we're from the Eastern Roman Empire. These fucking, like, Sassarans show up. Like, it's like, what the fuck happened to the Greeks?
Yeah.
What happened to the Greeks?
That does happen. Wait a minute, hold on, let's back up.
Why is this fucking Nicosian guy fucking...
That was funny. No, but here's the thing, though. What I don't like about 300 is more importantly the overall message, the otherness, the us versus them mentality that movie takes. And it really is one of those nasty, polarizing things that Americans love. You know? Really
don't make this about America.
No, I'm trying not to. But the point is, I'm not a huge fan of its overall message, that the other is the barbaric, monstrous horde coming to destroy all our good shit. And that, for me, is...
Well, okay, listen,
if you read Herodotus, that's kind of the overarching message, is that the Greeks were, a free people.
Absolutely.
And the Persians were trying to take away that liberty, which, to a degree, is not untrue, and it's not to say that the Greeks were necessarily, a morally superior people to the Persians.
They absolutely weren't.
Yeah, because this is the ancient world. People are being butchered left, right, and center.
But here's the thing,
it's almost
take into account the Achaemenid, as you said, moral difference between the Greeks. See, for all intents and purposes, when Cyrus came to power and usurped the Median and Lydian and went under Darius, the Egyptian, and the Mesopotamians, well, all of Mesopotamia, these people essentially did away with the notion of slavery in the region forever until they fell under Alexander, which was about 300 years later.
Right.
You take that into account, and you take what the Greek practice was, continuation of slavery, and even slavery was part of Spartan and Athenian culture.
Slavery,
my people with slavery and death. Exactly.
As if
they didn't have slaves.
As if the Spartans weren't objectively worse than the Persians, like before the
Enormously.
Persians.
Spartan society was run on the principle of slavery.
Yeah, I'd say objectively,
Spartan
society was more barbaric.
If you're talking about Greek city-states, Spartans were maybe the most barbaric ones, and their society was literally set up around the fact that we're a warrior culture. Everybody in our society is a warrior, except for the helots, which were a class of slaves that did everything else.
Yeah.
They farmed, they did X, Y, and Z.
They bred
Yeah.
against their will. And
Spartan society, it might have been every 5 years or every 10 years. I'm not sure exactly.
I think it was 5.
5? They would massacre the helots. Because they lived, they operated their society under the principle of, we'll have a fixed amount of, elite warriors, and then this vast population of slaves that vastly outnumbers us that does everything else. So every 5 years they get paranoid and have this tradition where they just fucking slaughtered the helots.
And it was also part of their training as well, wasn't it? That a young Spartan male was expected to be able to kill a helot without getting caught in the middle of the night or something.
That I'm not sure about.
No, it was
That's
part of their
far.
training regimen that they were expected to not only murder one of the lower classes, but also get away with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
As a not get caught. That was the whole part of their training.
Do you know what's another thing that I find kind of funny that I didn't realize about that movie until someone pointed it out to me? Everybody who's considered lesser than the Spartans is gay for some reason, right?
Yeah.
So the Athenians, there's that one scene where
Athenian boy lovers. Like,
Athenian
really?
boy lovers,
Really?
yeah, the Spartans were
I don't know,
boy
the
lovers
Spartans are
too.
pretty unintentionally gay in that movie. Like
Everyone
all
is
rubbing against each other.
And then Xerxes coming up massaging Leonidas. Come, Leonidas, I will make you a king.
It was almost like a really gay flick. It was like
but just
gay
a
movie.
king under me. All I ask is that you bend the knee and take me upon thy mouth.
Well, honestly, man, I mean, these dudes were all possibly the gayest looking. See, there's one particular scene.
Spartans, put down your armor, apply Vaseline.
There's actually, remember that scene where Leonidas sends Faramir off to tell the story, and of course Faramir looks back.
That guy's been branded as Faramir.
Yeah, and look, Faramir looks back with his one eye, and he sees all the Spartans just posing on the side of a mountain, and they look unfathomably gay in their speedos and opera capes, and it's awesome because it's it does.
They were gay as fuck, but the movie is everyone's gay but the Spartans. The Spartans are these strong heterosexual warriors, and then everybody else.
See, if I could extrapolate a point of agreement from what he's saying of the contention, why doesn't like the movie? It's they really went back and they retroactively kind of painted these two factions just completely different colors. The Spartans are these righteous, Western thinking, they're these great men, and
the Athenians were more Western thinking.
Yeah, the Athenians were, but they went back and they just kind of changed the whole atmosphere of this war and what it was about and who these people were.
Yeah.
as opposed to showing it realistically, right? And any realistic depiction of ancient warfare is going to be both sides are, for the most part, fucking hateable.
Now, here's the thing, though. I can appreciate it on the same level that I appreciate Spartacus.
Oh yeah,
right?
same.
Because Spartacus, I'm like
The movie or the show?
the show.
Okay.
Because I'm able to suspend disbelief here. Like, no, the slave revolt in Spartacus wasn't some benign, like, we're here to rescue all the slaves, you know?
Yeah, of course
no,
not,
they
no.
made Romans fight in gladiatorial combat after
They did.
they caught them.
Absolutely, they did.
So, I mean, I can suspend my disbelief and just appreciate for what it is. I wouldn't call it historical fiction, but like historically themed fiction. You know what I'm
Historically
saying?
themed fiction. That's a very good way to put it.
Yeah, 10,000 BC was like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It, like,
That movie didn't cut it for me.
Didn't cut it for me either. But
Yeah,
that was like
not
the
a great
genre.
movie, yeah.
That was the genre.
Yeah, for sure.
But one of the things that really annoyed me about the movie 300 was the depiction of the Persian military. Because that actually annoyed me later on, because I think
The
everyone...
Immortals were cool.
They were cool,
They
but
were fucking cool.
here's the
man.
thing. They could have been 100 times cooler if they actually stuck to what they actually were. See, in the movie, they portray them as like these black ninja kabuki mask wearing dudes.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah, from an aesthetic appeal, that's
fucking
kind of
badass.
cool, but I mean, you take
Yeah.
away the mask and they're monsters underneath. They're like, okay, no.
Yeah, that was crazy. They're like undead, like it's
Yeah,
fucking
like,
nuts.
why are they undead? Why?
And
are
then
they...
like there were like barbarians that the Persians were using. They had like rhino cavalry. And
Yeah, they
shit.
had rhinos,
Clearly they were
they
going
had
for
elephants, they had
And they
all
had
sorts
that
of
one
stuff.
executioner with the crab hands that like,
What the fuck?
I mean,
The farmer that portrayed them was this like deformed hunchback, like
and Zack Snyder
FDLTs, yeah.
himself,
He's one of the most hated characters apparently
In the
in
art.
all of Greek,
mythology.
in all of Western mythology.
Wow.
FELTs.
Oh, FELTs. But see, here's the thing. I mean, Zack Snyder himself came out and said that, yeah, this isn't a historical movie. This is a comic.
I don't think
book
anyone
movie.
saw it.
And-
Well, you know what? People did see it though.
No, because he was responding to a lot of the backlash that he received from this movie, calling it a just nonsense, dribble, historically retarded, and it really is that. But you have to take it. You have to take it with a grain of
Take
salt.
it
You
for
have
what
to-
it
Yeah,
is.
take it for what it is. It's a comic book movie adapted from a pretty fucked up dude who liked to write comic books at the time, and yeah. As
Why
far
was he
as
fucked up?
well, I don't know.
I don't know anything about him.
Frank Miller, he's an interesting sort. His look on the likes of Batman, for example. He's written two really important works specifically about Batman. One of them, he depicts Batman as this child-abusing, pretty incoherent and monstrous individual.
There's a
And the
reason
other
why
one-
Robin was living at his house in the
Oh no, you
Batcave.
should read. You should read that comic. It's pretty.
Get rid
Fun,
of
it's
the
pretty messed
Batcave,
up.
Robin. Enter my Batcave.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Jumping Jillikers, Batman. Never done this before. Okay, enough about 300.
Anyway, so yeah.
I'm gonna, because since we're just shooting the shit, I'm gonna throw a contentious issue here, and I'm gonna make them more contentious if I keep throwing them in.
Oh,
But I think Hillary Clinton, on a
Has Gates?
complete side note, was the best candidate out of the lot. I think she was the most pragmatic choice. Does anybody disagree vehemently?
I'm inclined to agree only because Bernie Sanders, as amazing as the notion of him being president would have been, it's probably unlikely because he's just way too left-leaning, and left-leaning in all the good ways. You know what I mean?
Do you know what I think? I'm going to disagree with you and play devil's advocate.
Sure.
I think Bernie Sanders did have, a lack of experience in foreign policy, but I think he could have grown into the office. I think once he got into the presidency, he could have, I don't know, learned on the job. Like that's what the presidency is all about. There's delegation. You know what I mean? You have different specialists and officials that are meant to handle different tasks. Now, I think this was a populist election, right? This was a populist election, and I think there was no chance in hell Hillary Clinton was winning. Even though she won the popular vote, there was no chance in hell she was going to win. It was an establishment candidate that was put together and put forward in a populist election, and she's just not what America needed at the time. That's what I think.
No, I'd agree with you. I mean, the Electoral College is an issue within itself, but as far as the advocacy for Bernie, for me, the buck stops at could he perform in Washington? And judging by history, like those kind of idealistic populists that have really left-leaning views, they tend to get destroyed. Washington tends to grind them down, and I think Hillary is the kind of she's the kind of figure in Washington who's influential enough to pass things, to get things that Obama had put on the rails, and actually progress them. And I think like actual progression is more important than like the ideals of Bernie, who they would have encountered more derision and less would have happened. I think he would have woke up the right wing machine in a way that that Hillary wouldn't have, because Hillary's a lot more.
Yeah, but the key issues that mattered, there's no way Hillary Clinton's going to. Okay, the number one issue, in my opinion, facing the United States is money and politics, because that is the meta issue. Yes. There's no fucking way that she would have been brought any attention to that issue. You know, she's a fucking leech that feeds off of that system. She that's how she made her fortune. So I think, I don't know. It's hard to say.
She seems like the most pragmatic choice, dude. I guess because with Bernie, there's a little bit of the unknown in there, right? Like, you don't know how the Democratic establishment is going to back him. You don't know how the Republican establishment is going to counter him.
They abandoned him. The Democratic
they left him in the dust.
They abandoned him from day one.
If he were to win, hypothetically speaking, right? The superdelegates back Bernie. He gets in there. How is he treated? How is he a Jimmy Carter administration in Washington? Like, or is he going to be more like Hillary? Hillary, I'd see as being more akin to Johnson, like just able to get shit done, to pass bills, and I think that's what America needs.
Oh man, I wouldn't compare Hillary to Lyndon B. Johnson.
I totally would. Why not?
I think Lyndon B. Johnson at least had a cohesive agenda that he wanted to push through.
Hillary had that too.
Hillary stuck her finger in the wind and saw what direction it was blowing, and just
Johnson did too. Johnson wasn't an idealist on any level. He was a political pragmatist. He picked up Kennedy and his platform and ran with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He didn't have a platform at all.
No, he didn't. But could you? Okay, what's Hillary's platform? What would she have gotten done for us?
I think even though her platform, like I'm gonna use tax as an example, where her changes were a lot more moderate than Bernie's were. Bernie's were a lot more correct, in my opinion. A little bit more extreme on the rich. That being said, I think Hillary could have actually passed them, and that's what matters. Now, if you look at Hillary's platform, I don't have any numbers memorized, but I've gone through it, and I've compared it to Bernie's. I've compared it to Trump's. And her platform is just a more dumbed-down, more right-wing version of Bernie's platform. Not drastically different to where it's Stone Age backwards. But it's like the lukewarm vanilla version, and I think it's safe enough where she could have passed it, in the same sense that Obama passed a lot of his progressive shit, right?
And
he compromised.
On that, I think most of what Donald Trump and his administration has been doing these last couple of years has been very much to try to erase what Obama has been trying to do throughout his entire 8 years in his presidency. What Hillary Clinton would have done was she wouldn't have bothered wasting time doing any of that. She would have indeed pushed forward many of the systems that Obama was trying to implement, and she would have made sure that they would have lasted, so that no president after her, or such as Mr. Trump is trying to do, would be able to destroy them. Which is very much what the Trump administration has been putting all their attention towards.
I'll take that a step further. I'll take that a step further and say that Trump is not only undoing policies implemented by Obama, but he's undoing, policies that are a part of the American ethos.
Fuck yeah.
His attack on public lands being the number one, the biggest attack on the American ethos. If that's not anti-American, I don't know what is.
Exactly. Partisanship's the biggest threat to democracy right now. Like Toronto could be a microcosm of that, right? They plan a subway, they plan it for an entire mayor's administration, mayor loses the election, all the funds and people hired for the planning and all the funds allocated for the planning gets completely axed. And the project goes back to square one. And then they pick another gimmick and they run with that. New mayor gets elected. Then so I think keeping America on this slowly progressive rail is more important than electing Trump or Bernie, who I think would encounter enough derision.
Okay, now, you brought up Jimmy Carter. Here's where I'm going to disagree with you that Bernie Sanders' presidency would have been a complete failure.
I'm not saying that, but go ahead.
Jimmy Carter. He got slaughtered by the Republicans. But at the same time, I think he brought he brought awareness to some key issues.
Yes.
And it was important for the American people to see that environmentalism matters, right? Mm-hmm. He made it front and center in his campaign. And I think had Bernie gotten into power and been repeatedly shut down by the political establishment, that might have been an important lesson for the American people to see. That, look, your government is not as much on your side as you might think it is. These key issues that are important to a lot of people, to the majority of liberals and centrists,
I mean,
that could have been an important lesson.
But
And
also,
I think,
examine what happened in the 8 years preceding Jimmy Carter's administration, right? It's almost like, that was one of his best talents as a president. He was so aware of the issues facing everyday Americans. But it's almost like the neocons, once they came into power after him, almost as a response to him, he's weak, associated his ideas and his failed administration that didn't get much done, like with weakness. And all of a sudden, the ideals that Carter was championing, which were, I'm not going to lie, like 40 to 30 years ahead of his time.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of a sudden are shut down, and it's replaced by 8 years of hyper-conservative military spending and hyper-aggressive foreign affairs. And,
it's hyper-aggressive.
Yeah, super aggressive. Iran-Contra, like all that
intervention in South America.
Yeah, intervention.
The School of the Americas.
Which Shahab would know quite a bit about, actually.
It really is. See,
sorry, my point, just if I can wrap that up. If I can wrap that up really neatly. I mean, that could happen to Bernie. Bernie gets elected for 4 years. You know, certain disasters come about. All of a sudden, his ideas are associated with failure because his administration failed, right?
Okay, so...
That could happen. I'm not saying it will, but go ahead.
Go on South America.
Well, it really was among the points, between the years of Ronald Reagan and Bush Sr. and backwards towards... Who was the... I can't recall the president who was in office during the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Kennedy.
No, before that. It was Kennedy who was in office, but I'm talking about Eisenhower. Thank you. One of Eisenhower's primary contributions towards Latin American history is very much the establishment of the School of the Americas. I don't know if you two know anything about that. It's essentially the facility, I think, currently, it has a different name now, but at the time it was in Virginia, where it was an institution designed to train potential dictators throughout Latin America. For example, Fulgencio Batista, the previous dictator in Cuba, he was trained there, as well as Augusto Pinochet in Chile.
Jesus.
These people were all trained in this location. These people are born in their native countries, brought to the United States, trained by the CIA, and essentially taught how to be dictators loyal to the United States. Not loyal, but friendly to the United States.
As terrible as this is, I can't help but picture some like hacky sitcom like Dictator University. Hey, Holmes.
Noriega's there.
Noriega's there.
You gonna kill those innocent farmers, man? Yeah, Holmes, I need the cocaine plantations. It's like insert a 1950s laugh track.
And what the United States was doing in South America was very much the start, or rather the scenario grounds for what they would eventually do in the Middle East. They learned a great deal in South America, and throughout the entire continent they learned a great deal. These lessons that they took with them into places like Israel, like Saudi Arabia, like current-day Syria, Lebanon. Very effective. I'm not going to lie. As disgusting and deplorable as these practices are, very effective.
An effective form of foreign affairs.
Talking about Bernie Sanders, he has been very vocal, very outward about his lack of support for American intervention throughout the Middle East, namely Israel. He has been very vocal against these people, and would he have been able to make any significant strides into detracting U.S. support from Israel? I'm not too sure. But that being said, I think he would have definitely made an attempt of it. Something that may have been destroyed immediately after by his successor.
I think we need to support Israel.
Okay.
To a degree. I think we need to hold them accountable for war crimes.
Okay.
Yes.
But I feel like American support of Israel is necessary. I feel like
I do not.
They're our only strong ally in the Middle East.
Sure.
They're also a stronghold of freedom.
Democracy, individual rights. What other country in the Middle East? I challenge you to find me another country in the Middle East that supports gay rights.
Doesn't Turkey?
Jordan?
Turkey?
Yeah. Doesn't Turkey support gay rights? And Turkey's technically in the Middle East as well. I mean, not that, if you ask them, they won't say it. But
no, bro, we're in Europe.
I mean, no, Turkey does. I don't think supports it, but definitely allows it.
I'm gonna.
Either way,
I'm going to get off on a technicality here, and even though I don't know if they support gay rights in Turkey, I'm going to say that Turkey is not in the Middle East. I'm going to say that I'm going to say they're Hellenic.
Oh, for God's sake!
Byzantium is Greek.
Yeah,
Byzantium is Roman.
Hey, I mean, on the fringes of the Turkish and the Aegean Sea. I mean, there was Troy there once. So I guess you could say they're
Ilium's there.
Yeah, you could say that they're Greek kind of. But I mean, they're not.
Those people have just been like bred into the Turks at this point.
Yeah, but seriously, what are you gonna do, master? Jeez.
Regardless, on this Israel issue, I feel like even if we disagree with a lot of the policies they've implemented, you disagree. I'm not saying I agree with their conduct in the Middle East, and I acknowledge that the Gaza Strip, what's going on there is fucking deplorable. It's the world's largest open air prison, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
Well said.
And the Palestinians deserve a settlement, right? So I'm gonna say that the Palestinians deserve a homeland, but it's a complicated situation, and I'm not gonna pretend like I have all the answers. Right?
Nobody does.
They're also colonizing Palestine illegally, right?
They are.
Yeah,
they are.
It's
pure colonialism.
It is the proving ground. See, I'd imagine that there's not a great deal of violence in Israel, the mainland Israel, because they're generating and focusing all that aggression, all that military spending towards essentially two regions within their own country. And I suppose as an outlet for all this nastiness, it does make sense. However, you take into account that this isn't just a place. This is a land filled with people, living, breathing human beings, and something that many Israeli politicians and many right-wing conservative thinkers within Israel don't seem to understand. That yes, these people, you are breeding the enemies that you hate so much by implementing whatever it is you're trying to do in the region. But they don't understand that, and I don't think I fully understand it. But I can at least understand the plight of when a gun is being shoved in your face and in your family's face, you feel the need to pick up a gun right back. Not the answer, of course not. I'm not defending Palestine's some Palestinians' right to fight. I'm not defending that. What I'm saying is I can understand it at least.
Now, war is messy, right? War is messy, and politics is messy. And this whole situation, there's no clear good guy and bad guy to it, obviously, because obviously, it was wrong to. The initial colonization of Palestine was wrong.
Wrong, yeah.
It was wrong.
Completely wrong.
But at this point, is Hezbollah an evil organization?
Yes. Evil is subjective, but it's definitely not a nice organization.
It's not an organization that's in line with our Western liberal perspective. Absolutely, but it's a fucking war zone.
But I think Israel's got to make more like they got to think more Iron Dome and less Occupy Gaza Strip. Right, more
defense rather than
Here's another problem that's
at this point. What else can you do? I think, to be honest, Israel's already there, effectively illegally. Right, they just settled there.
See, they're there
It doesn't matter about these histories and these tribulations from 500-600 years ago. Like to me, it's just besides the point, right? The climate is what the climate is. Mm-hmm. They could have done this in a region that wouldn't have caused so much tension.
They could have. The original we learned about it. The original plans for the settlements of the Jews. Argentina, Ethiopia, Israel. Two of them had large fertile tracts of uninhabited land. One of them, was stated that they had a claim to it in some fucking vile 2,000-year-old book.
That's exactly
what makes most sense?
Would it be awkward if they set up the Zionist state in Argentina where all the Nazis were chilling after they fled?
I think that would have definitely solved that problem. Yeah. See, when all these Nazis fled, were actually thanks to the Vatican Church, were allowed to flee to places like Argentina. I think establishing a Jewish state within that piece of land would have immediately solved that problem. That's it. That shit cancels each other out.
Don't mind me, Juden. It's not like I'm some ex-Nazi or something.
I'm an Argentinian man.
My
drink
name...
coffee with lemon rice.
Hola.
My name is Augusto.
Hola.
Augusto Juan Sanchez. I love tortilla bread.
Don't mind my blue eyes and high cheekbones.
Yeah. No. But there it is,
Okay, I got another issue of contention.
Wait, hold on.
Go ahead, finish your point.
I have something that I wanted to bring up.
Good.
While we're still on this Bernie Sanders issue.
I love that guy. Honestly, I love that guy.
We need... Yeah. Another big problem that's plaguing the United States, and I'm a huge fan of parliamentary systems. A huge fan of parliamentary systems. Not just because it gives you an option to vote, not, for a party that's a little more in line with your thinking. Even though in Canada we have three big major political parties, one could argue two that kind of dominate the debate. Sure. even if you were to introduce some smaller political parties, I think the key concept there is that you can have political parties that are started up that revolve around one particular issue. Perfect example is, the Green Party and other environmentalist parties that started up, snatched up about 4% of the votes. Major political parties saw them and said, hey, look, 4% of the vote. This is something that people care about. Let's incorporate it into our platform so we can take that 4%. Right? That's where smaller political parties come into play. And that's where independent candidates should come into play in the United States. Sadly, they don't. That's what a parliamentary system's for. And I think just the fucking sheer inertia of the political system in the United States, they're never going to have a reform changing, a two-party system into a parliamentary system in our lifetime. But could do some good.
Yes, Americans are afraid of change, though. They hate it. They hate it. And plus, they're just not informed enough to understand, like, an alternate system. They're just so culturally stuck in their ways. It's going to be difficult to implement that, right? The establishments don't want it, so... Yeah. You know what I mean?
I'm going to say this again. I said this last week, but I think states' rights is the glue that holds the United States together. Sorry, Shahob, go on.
That's all right. No. Just as a from that point, I think most people are afraid of change. Many people fear the unknown, and for radical system reform, especially on a government level, especially on a national level, that would eventually affect the multinational spectrum. That is something to be afraid of. That's a rational thing to be afraid of. That
Absolutely,
kind of But you really, the first step has to be taken somehow. And to get away from the clear flaws in the United States government and their systems of election and, well, pretty much everything, there's a great deal of flaws. How do you change them? Where do you even begin?
Where do you begin? Where do you begin?
States' rights could be a good example of that, because my favorite thing about states' rights is the state's ability to test out models. Like, states can have these varying models of governance, and like you can kind of get a read on, okay, so Colorado did this, that works. Tennessee did this, that doesn't work. And states will pick up on trends. And
we were talking about this last week with reference to gun control, actually. And the states' rights gives the opportunity for states to experiment with certain policies. Yeah. It's the testing ground of politics in the United States. And sometimes, if enough states adopt a certain idea, it doesn't even matter if the federal government's on board. That's the beautiful thing, because there's such inertia within the federal government to do anything useful at all. But
they're still arguing over the Roe versus Wade debate. Like, it's fucking 2018. This is not an issue that's relevant anymore. This should be settled by the states. Move on.
Yeah.
Federal issues should be much greater. We should bigger threats, foreign affairs threats, right?
And that's where I really feel the there's no one good political system. There's no one universal political system.
There are better systems.
There are better options, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like people wouldn't be afraid of changing, or a better word would be evolving a political system if they understood what the evolution was going to bring them. Like, the fact that a candidate won in the last election that didn't get the majority of the votes, to me, smells like broken. That's broken democracy.
You know what? Okay. I would have got the majority of the votes. If so many illegals hadn't voted for Hillary, okay?
Have you ever heard of more half-baked, conspiratorial...
Dude, Orwell, eat your heart out. That guy gets people to double think. He can lie, and within a day, he can go back on the lie, and people will forget about it. I'm going to put Hillary in jail. Everyone give Hillary a standing ovation, because she put a great... Did people forget? Now, a lot of the smarter people that support Trump, they often justify it like, oh, it's political pragma. Like, this is 4D chess. It's like, Trump is an entertainer, and he's not a fucking Kissinger. This motherfucker's not thinking of... He just has this ability to lie and then mow over it with a half-truth. And like, he can just carry that out. His base is dumb enough where that happens. You can't justify it.
I think it was John Oliver who said, stepping on a nail is one thing, but Donald Trump is lying down on a bed of nails.
You can walk right across it.
Exactly. Yeah. And at this point, whatever he says, however he says it, is nowhere near as important as the impact that it makes. And that, unfortunately, is the huge problem. The impact of what Trump says either empowers a lot of his support and definitely confuses the shit out of people who are directly against him. they don't know where to even begin by attacking him because by directly attacking what he says, you're automatically attacking the wrong thing because what he says is inconsequential. However, it's not to the people who support him. They look at what he writes on Twitter, they hear what he says in those little podiums of his, and they love it.
Ultimately, he's a symptom of a greater problem.
I agree.
Very much so.
Yeah. It's not like, he's not, we were talking about this the other day, he's not the fucking circus ringleader, he's just the main act, that's it. He's the product. Everyone paid to see him perform. I think the fact is that for the average dumbass, and the majority of people are dumb, like let's face it, the vast majority of people are dumb.
Yep.
His charisma and his straight-to-the-point, nonsensical, kind of unfamiliar political talk was just so much more appealing for the average idiot than Hillary's very run-of-the-mill, very obviously fake, political pitch, and that lost her the election. She wasn't likable. Plus,
he was something different, and the people wanted something different.
It's like different or shit.
They wanted a populace that spoke to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How unfortunate.
And I feel like,
it does definitely speak volumes of American politics when a being like Donald Trump can come, be widely successful because he is very much this
successful. Yeah, I'm so successful.
Be wildly successful because of what he says, because of his difference.
Suck me, Shahob. I'm so successful.
He's asking me to suck him. Keep that in mind.
We just did have a long talk about 300s.
Come to the symposium, my boy.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to propose a hypothetical.
Uh-oh.
Something that's a little bit AIDS historical. Who is the better general?
Oh.
Is it Cyrus the Great?
He wasn't a general.
Huh?
He wasn't a general.
He led armies. Did he
but
not?
he wasn't a general.
If you lead armies, you're a general.
I mean, sure.
Can we not get bogged down in semantics? It's
I'm
like
just saying.
It's a worthy question. It's a worthy question.
You said the word.
I got a better one.
I prefer the word.
Seven,
No, Cyrus the Great versus Alexander. Now,
Alexander?
Okay.
I can't think of a more contentious issue to trigger Shahob.
I'll say Cyrus the Great because his empire endured long.
Fuck you guys. I'm surrounded on both sides.
Well, here's the thing.
I'm gonna say I didn't say who's the better. I didn't say who's the better
Leader.
Mm-hmm. I said who's the better general.
I see. So who would?
General.
So who would win against who in an all-out battle? Is that what you're saying?
What's that?
Who would win against who in an all-out battle? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's kind of a no-brainer though. Then, if it's general, because Alexander did that against Persia, right?
Well, here's the thing though.
Outnumbered.
Plus, how much do we know about
multiple? Not much.
Yeah, because that's where he's got a point. Like, how much do we know about his generalship? Like, how do we know that he wasn't sitting on the throne? His generals did it, and then Cyrus.
Well, here's the thing, though.
In fact, we don't know much about Cyrus's battle tactics at all, or what the Persian armies were like.
What we do know about Cyrus is that you're right. He did lead his men right in the front with his army, unlike what his late successor, would do, Darius III. At least according to Herodotus. But anyway, the point simply being,
Darius III was the one who fought Alexander, right?
Yes.
Not Darius the administrator. Darius the First.
No, Darius I was the immediate successor to Cyrus.
Yeah.
Well, not the immediate, but the important immediate successor.
Cyrus.
Then it was Astyages, and then it was Darius. Xerxes came after Darius.
After Darius.
Okay.
Yeah, Xerxes was the immediate successor to Darius. Anyway, point is that we know that Cyrus absolutely led his men and was even trained beside the companions, what we now consider the immortals. At the time, this is ancient history, you understand. This was a time when the leader was expected to not only be the strongest, most impressive battle man in existence, but he had to be a figurehead, not just because he was king, but because he was definitely trained beside the elite and was himself an elite warrior. So he was expected to lead his troops on the front line, otherwise he was nothing.
Incredibly admirable, and I think it also, it kind of harkens back to Persia's origins from, the Central Asian steppe. Like,
very much so, absolutely.
Yeah, you see from Cyrus to Darius III, you see, an empire that is, semi-nomadic peoples, warlike, and then late empire, it's this giant confederate. They're two different. It's like Rome at its beginning and end. Like,
very much so.
They're two completely different empires. At the end, it's this confederation of multinational, commanded by one man giving instructions via symbols to the rest of his army, because everyone's speaking a different language. Like, and I got to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily. Now, Darius III was not a great military commander.
He was the opposite of that.
Yeah, but actually, the way I've read about him is that I would compare him if I had to, I know they're completely different time periods, but if I had to compare him to a person, it would be like Tsar Nicholas II. Not a good leader, but like a decent man who just wanted to look after his family.
Actually, there's this great book by Pierre Bryant, and the book is titled "In the Shadow of Alexander, Darius III." And
Great author, by the way.
Yeah, great author, and the book is phenomenal. The book actually, middle way in the book, it really depicts Darius III as there was a correspondence between him and Alexander, that Darius at one point was willing to give up his entire empire because his family was being held captive in Babylon. He was willing. It painted him as an idiot as far as leadership, but a great family man.
A great family man, but unfortunately the qualities that make a great leader and a great person are not the same. Now, to get back to our discussion, the one reason why I think Cyrus could not have beaten Alexander, not the one reason. I mean, pick a plethora of them. But one of the biggest ones is armor and heavy infantry. Persian armies, time and time again, came up short against Western armies because of wicker shields, inferior armor, and yeah, that just made the difference.
Well, also not to mention Alexander's army at a certain point in his campaign, it was just like a well-oiled Persian killing machine, right? Like, how are especially a more ancient army, like one that Cyrus would be the head of. He'd probably have a lot of investments in chariots, right? Yeah. I mean, all shit that Alexander can just dispose of really, really easily. And I'd imagine, like, it's just tough to say, but we're talking about the individuals, and I just don't know enough about Cyrus and what he did to draw a comparison.
What we do know is that Cyrus defeated the Medians, the Lydians, the Babylonians, and possibly what was left of the Assyrians. These are all armies. These are all city-states and civilizations. That definitely took very much the Greek example of heavily fortified soldiers. Lots of armor, lots of very strong weapons. See, Cyrus's army...
Sorry, isn't there an age difference here? Aren't these Bronze Age?
Yes and no, my friend.
See, the Babylonians that Cyrus defeated were the Neo-Babylonians after the likes of Nebuchadnezzar II. Okay. So these are all still Bronze Age soldiers and whatnot.
So I mean, like it's a much more cushiony foe than.
Well, we don't really know exactly
what a modern Persian army would be.
See, what Darius and Xerxes brought to the field of combat when they were trying to take the Greek city-states probably wasn't the same thing that Cyrus had in his initial campaigns in taking the other empires in the region. I'm not too sure what his soldier complement was, but I can tell you it definitely wasn't what his successors had.
The problem is we don't have enough information.
Yeah, now, see that's my issue. Like we don't know what he had. Like he asked me the other day, okay, Scipio or Caesar, and
by the way, I think I'm leaning more in your direction just because I forgot that Marius's military reforms came after Scipio.
Yeah, like it's just such drastically different periods with such different enemies, and the Roman army was just organized in two completely different ways. Like by the time Caesar was at the helm of it, like they're using much smaller cohorts and just smaller groups, more maneuverable groups. I think that was the opposite. They're using bigger groups.
No, more maneuverable groups.
Yeah, it's the more maneuverable one, right? And then like back in the day, like the Romans would just concentrate their force into these giant, massive.
When the Romans began, most people don't understand that they were still using the phalanx.
Yeah, the old Greek, like let's line as many guys up, and we lose when we run home.
Yeah,
and like so it's just so tough. And like the question I posed to Stefan was like, I'm pretty sure Caesar under Scipio's circumstances could do what Scipio did, like as an individual, as like a leader with integrity. But the question is, could Scipio do what Caesar did in all of his circumstances? And like the answer is, I definitely don't fucking know. Sure. But I do know what Caesar did was kind of like a close to a 1 in a million kind of thing. And like the same goes here. Like I don't know in detail like all of the
Caesar's conquest can be compared to Alexander's in that if you lost your legions, if Caesar lost his legions, that's it. You're not getting reinforcements. Yeah, that was one of the strengths of Rome was that you managed to kill some of our legions. All right, new legions are gonna rise up to meet you. Yeah. Keep killing our legions. Eventually we're gonna kill your army. But To go back to Cyrus versus Alexander, one of the ways I could potentially see Alexander losing is because, like I said, we don't know a shit ton about Cyrus.
I think a better debate as to who would win in a fight as far as military campaigns go. I think a much better example would be Xerxes the First versus Alexander, because we know a lot about what Xerxes brought to the field of battle. Well, at least from what Herodotus teaches us,
Alexander
and from
would-
what certain
Plus,
Alexander
he's working
would-
with weaponry and infantry that can actually stack up.
Alexander
Yeah.
would smash Xerxes.
I don't think so. Because here's the thing.
I know so, my friend.
I don't think so at all. Because here's the thing.
He smacked Darius.
Yeah.
Darius the Third, yeah. But here's the thing. Xerxes, what he was bringing to the field of battle, again, is probably very much not what Herodotus is saying at all. What we know from what Herodotus teaches us is that, besides the millions and millions of hordes of really shitty equipped soldiers, I mean, there's that, sure, but what a lot of people seem to forget is that at Thermopylae and before that at Marathon, both those fights, well, Marathon was under Darius, but anyway, point is, a lot of those fights ended as soon as the companions were involved in the battle. The companions being the immortals. Once they entered the field of battle, the fight was over. See, Persia knew that the mass majority of its legions, I use that term figuratively,
Army
not
groups, divisions,
literally, not
divisions.
literally Roman legions.
Yeah.
They had to be ill-equipped because the elites, the strongest of the army, had to be far better equipped because they could only afford so much.
But that
But
is
there's no central treasury necessarily
Yeah.
funding this army because
Sure there is. Absolutely there was.
no. A lot of the Persian armies, to my understanding, were raised from individual domains within the Persian Empire. Give me
Yes,
X amount
but-
of cavalry, X amount of infantry, you fund it.
But here's the thing, though. That's not
The
that's
central
not the
treasury
case
is
at all.
not funding these armies.
That's not the case at all. See,
And cohesion is a big factor in Alexander's army, despite being, outnumbered. Cohesion. Alexander's army is moving as
It's a modern Western army. Too.
It's a modern.
That's
Western
something that
army.
you have to take into account. Like this is
They
this is
perfected
modern,
the hammer and anvil.
Yeah,
tactic.
these are
perfected.
these are like Myrmidon. These are modern.
The companion
Western
cavalry
swordsmen.
is some of the best cavalry
Yeah.
the Western world has ever seen.
sure, but again, going back to the funding thing, the Persian Empire was split up into regional governorships called satrapies. These satrapies all had their figureheads within a specific stronghold that would govern a specific region within the empire. But all that money would be eventually, all the taxes that they collected in their region would be funneled to them, and they would in turn funnel it to Pasargad or Persepolis, the capital. So yes, there was indeed a national treasury. Now to mobilize...
I didn't say there wasn't a national treasury. I just said that a lot of
the army, there was.
a lot of these satraps were responsible for raising their own armies. Right? It's not like Rome where you're getting a cohesive. The Roman army in Gaul is comparable to the Roman army in Illyria. If you take a commander from Gaul and you put him at the head of the legions in Illyria, you're getting he could do that competently.
Yeah.
But Persia is bringing such a diversity of troops that I don't know if that would be the case.
The military doctrines that I guess Persia would have used at that time, they probably wouldn't have been around long enough as a unified force to kind of become written in stone like the concept of a Western war machine would have, at least at that point. Because I'll put Alexander's army of Myrmidon up against any Roman legion, just them individually and their experiences and whatnot. And their organization is definitely comparable to a Roman legion, right? It's slightly different.
Well,
But it's not necessarily more archaic.
that would be tough to debate though, because Rome smashed phalanxes whenever they came up against them, right? But then again, Alexander was an extraordinary commander.
He's using
good
a
at
different
pitch,
kind
good,
of
good at
phalanx in
pitched
general.
battle too.
Great
Yeah,
at pitched
it's
battles?
It's a much different,
much better cavalry than the Romans could have ever fielded
There you
without
go.
Germanic allies.
Sure.
professional cavalry,
Yeah, Roman
not
cavalry
auxiliary. Yeah.
was shit.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Between Cyrus and Alexander, I mean, I guess Alexander's the default winner only because we know more about what he
Yeah,
brings.
it's
Oh
not.
no,
It's not,
Caleb's gonna catch some backlash with this Persian fronts with this.
Yeah, but I mean...
it's not the fairest.
It's not a fair
we need to
comparison.
know enough about both of them. I always felt like
agree.
Napoleon Caesar, perfect comparison. They both had their own traits.
I'm
they both had their own
gonna take a
personalities.
lead. You guys keep talking.
Yeah, go for
They
it.
both had their own traits. They both had their own personalities, and you can definitely. There's more parallels to draw. We know, in pretty precise detail, what they did, how they campaigned, how they took initiative. Right.
Sure.
I mean, one comparison I could draw right off the bat, like a contrast, is how they conducted themselves outside of their military life, and how that influences their life on the battlefield. First of all, they were both all about work. Working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But Napoleon seemed to be a little bit on the shyer, meeker, more private kind of end of, just I guess, less of a big personality. Much
Are you
more.
talking about as an individual?
Yeah, as
what
an
he really
individual.
was?
He had won wife, maybe a couple lovers, but nothing
Right.
crazy, nothing worthy of a god king, which he was at one point, effectively.
I guess so. Yeah.
Caesar off the battlefield was like a lot more aggressive and manipulative, and like Napoleon just strikes me as more naive, like a little bit more idealistic than Caesar.
Well, as far as personality-wise, I suppose so, because we know that Caesar was indeed. We're talking about Julius Gaius, right? Gaius Julius Caesar. Yeah, I mean, for sure, Caesar was by far a much more conniving individual, only because he was raised within the stigma and, of course, the culture that was the Roman Republic at the time.
Mm.
So these are a lot of quasi politicians really vying for control over one another. And think about his two main competition as well as his friends. We're talking Marcus Crassus and we're also talking Pompey Magnus. These two, by themselves, very powerful individuals, and he was in direct, not opposition, but in comparison to these two individuals.
Yeah.
And yeah, he had to be this very elaborate sort of individual in order to compete with them.
Can I be honest? I think this is an unfair comparison, Caesar and Napoleon.
Because Napoleon came after Caesar, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, like the only comparison
That's what I
you
felt
can...
about Caesar and Scipio.
Yeah, but there's... Dude, you feel that way about Caesar and Scipio, but not Caesar and Napoleon?
I know, I definitely do. That's the advantage Napoleon gets.
Dude, the distance between Napoleon and Caesar... But, like, how do you even compare them? You can only compare individual figures. You can't compare armies.
That's what we were doing.
That's what we were doing.
Yeah? Okay.
We were going into, like, who they were, like,
not their armies. The army, armies, there's no comparison.
Yeah, exactly. There's no comparison.
Napoleon's armies would shoot twice and go home.
Exactly. Like, you can't compare,
Equestrians! What are these bizarre fire sticks? Return to Rome! Zeus has against us!
Why do they have guns made of wood that shoot metal and spit fire? What the fuck?
Wait, Shahob, what are you talking about? What is a gun? What is this weird phraseology you've uttered? A gun. Yeah.
I meant to say weapons. Made of wood, shoots metal, and breathes fire. Why?
Must have been how the Native Americans felt when European colonists came over.
Don't even get me started, bro.
Well, let's breach this topic for now. Let's continue with Napoleon and Caesar because we're getting a bit jumpy. But what, you gotta go? Yeah. Okay.
Hey.
Lucas is going to peace in the Middle East because it's Good Friday and he's a good Italian boy.
I'm a good Roman Catholic, and I uphold the Pope and his orders and his edicts.
He's got to go.
Nomine Padre Filii Spiritus.
Exactly.
He's so Catholic that he is going to eat fish today and
molest children and embezzle funds and burn historical documents and
molest those children.
Endorse the Nazis. And
can you hide some Nazis for us?
Yeah, I'll hide.
Be a good Catholic.
Nazi rape victims for you.
All right.
Take it easy, brother. That's it.
Have a good rest of the discussion. Sorry.
Peace in the Middle East.
Here, I'll bring that to the kitchen.
Gracias. All right. So.
I'll see you guys tonight. Are you coming, Shaw?
I'm not too sure. I gotta get back to you guys on that.
You're not coming tonight?
I have training tomorrow, and I don't want to be hungover for it.
Fudge.
I'm
All
sorry,
right.
bro.
Get your Angus over here.
Nice shot. Yeah, bro. 5-hour facility training, so that means lots and lots of swimming.
Oh, God damn it. How early do you have to be up?
Huh?
How early do you have to be up?
Well, not too early, but still, I don't want to be all weary and hungover for it, you know what I mean?
It's the best way to be at work.
Oh,
weary and hungover, barely functioning.
Dude, I can't throw up in the pool, bro. that's the whole mess of problems by itself. I hope you're going to edit all this out.
Throw up all over one of your students.
Oh, dude.
I'm sure I could edit it out. But will I? Dun dun dun!
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So where were we?
Napoleon. Oh, you guys were comparing Napoleon and Caesar.
Well, the people, as they were by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting individuals. I love reading about them.
Similar figures in that they were populists, but although it's debated whether Napoleon did that as a tactic or more, or was it more genuine? That's hotly debated.
Right. What I do like about Napoleon is his almost insane bromance with, was it Peter of Prussia?
You tell me.
Oh man, it was really interesting. Do you know anything about that?
Not much.
The King of Prussia, I think his name was Peter. I can't particularly remember. But these two had like this almost homophobic admiration for one another.
Homophobic admiration?
Yeah, like not homophobic, homosexual admiration for one another. Not homophobic. No, these two, like, yeah, very, very interesting relationship between those two. Lots of correspondence, lots of letters back and forth, basically jacking each other off the entire time.
Hot.
Yeah, and apparently it was really interesting for the men in their respective armies. Of course, their bromance abruptly ended when Napoleon conquered Prussia. But, before that, it was really interesting.
So this was a Prince of Prussia?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because it wasn't Frederick.
It wasn't Frederick, no.
Or what was the name of the leader at it? It would be funny if it was the leader of Prussia that defeated him at Waterloo. Because that guy was really old.
I don't think it was him, no. But anyway, yeah.
Funny little anecdote.
Oh, by the way, I don't really know any of the specifics of that. I just remember reading it once a long time ago, and I thought it was really interesting.
What's the name of the leader that defeated Napoleon at Prussia? The Prussian leader defeated Napoleon at Waterloo. Okay. I'm going to look this up because I have a funny anecdote about it, but I can't remember the gentleman's name. Let's see what his name was. The commander of the Prussian armies in the Battle of Waterloo. Von Blücher. Von Blücher, yeah. So apparently Von Blücher was kind of going insane and a little bit senile.
Oh.
And at one point...
And he beat him at Waterloo?
What's that?
And he beat Napoleon at Waterloo?
Well, yeah, he was the... so the bulk work was done by Arthur Wellesley. The Duke of Wellington himself.
Duke of Wellington.
He did the bulk work of the fighting, and then at the last minute, Von Blücher came in as reinforcements and won the day. Yeah, so funny thing about him is he was so senile that at one point he refused to get out of his tent because he thought a French soldier had impregnated him with an elephant, and he thought he was pregnant.
Holy shit.
Yeah, this is real. This is real.
Wow.
And that's the man who defeated Napoleon, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't even know where to begin with that.
I am pregnant with the elephant. I will not leave my tent. Not till I have given birth on a full moon.
I'd imagine Napoleon must have been just flabbergasted by this guy's tactics. I don't understand how he could have beaten him.
Well, that's the thing. He was just the reinforcing army that came at the last minute, right?
Mm.
Like, Wellesley put up, or Wellington as people call him, put up, a great, defensive strategy and held off Napoleon until the Prussians got there as reinforcements. Like, if you're engaged in the kind of battle that was going on at Waterloo, I mean, I don't care if you're reinforced by a bunch of toddlers after one side's going down.
I guess so. Oh my god.
With that kind of all day, picture that, all day on the battlefield. Just,
oh jeez. Exhausting.
Yeah.
Hey boy.
You wanna wrap this puppy up?
I think so.
All right. This has been the Three Empires podcast. Peace in the Middle East. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. That was the second installment of the Three Empires. Next week, we are talking incest in history and in our modern-day world. The results might surprise you. I'll give you a hint. It's not just Alabama bagging their sisters. Stay tuned. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Peace! Cue the outro music. That's it! I warned you once! Get out of me, tavern! Get out! Get out! Ja, maar hier, vingers nou aan, nou.